Welcome to the Meerkat Squad podcast.
Here we will investigate the intersection of ADHD, autism, and other identities, and all of the variety of experiences that result from it. We are using a neuro-affirming, inclusive, and decolonial lens, and we will draw on the lived experiences of ourselves and others to explore all facets of AuDHD life.
This podcast is a companion to an online community with a variety of resources, from courses and lectures to discussions and social events. Find the Meerkat Squad on Patreon to join in. Hello and welcome to the Meerkat Squad podcast, where we talk about everything AuDHD. I'm Sheila Henson.
And I am Joris Lechene. I'm very excited to be here. This is our first episode of our first podcast. This is a slightly new format for us because we've been doing the Meerkat Squad for 4 years. We did 10 sessions, 10 seasons, but this is the first time that we're trying out this new version where we try to have an interactive side, which is not this one because here we are talking to the camera, but there will be some interactions, and then we'll have the podcast side, which will be freely available, and where we hopefully will have guests in the future episodes. But for now, it's just me and Sheila, and we're gonna introduce ourselves and tell you a little bit more about the Meerkat Squad.
So what is the Meerkat Squad? Why does it exist? First of all, AuDHD is autism and ADHD when they come together. And one of the reasons that the Meerkat Squad exists is that I am an ADHD coach and working with a lot of AuDHDers, people with ADHD and autism. And those people didn't really feel like they belonged in either ADHD spaces or autistic spaces. And so I decided to create an AuDHD space, even though I'm not autistic. I'm only ADHD. So of course I had to find some collaborators who were actually autistic. And I found Joris and also our friend Lena. And so we did this group called the Meerkat Squad, where we supported ADHD autistics and created community and had a lot of learning and fun for, like Joris said, 4 or 5 years.
Yes, and I think this is the time to highlight that we came up with the term meerkat. And why did we come up with meerkat? We were thinking about, because you have already some training sessions with other animals.
Yeah, I have the squirrel team for ADHD. I had an animal for each of my coaching groups, and we needed one that would represent an AuDHDer.
Right. And so we thought that the meerkat that is always alert, always looking around, and always, very, reactive, extremely reactive, but also very easily distracted in the sense that, they're looking in that direction. They're looking over there. They're looking over there. We thought that it was a good metaphor for AuDHD. And also, important or interesting thing, they live in community. And that's one of the core tenets and one of the highlights of the Meerkat Squad is that we very often talk about autism as a deficit in socialization, difficulties to communicate, to socialize, to bond with other people, which are indeed experiences that many autistic people experience. And we also usually speak about ADHD in a very individualistic and personal, individual way. And we wanted to really highlight the fact that just because we have autism or just because we are AuDHD doesn't mean that we don't need community. And I would even posit that we need even more community than neurotypical people. So, and this is one of the reasons why I find it so important that we have the Meerkat Squad, and this is what I'm going to try to do. So Sheila has a background working with neurodivergent people. Myself, I am autistic. I am diagnosed ADHD. But my specialty, my domain of expertise, let's say, is sociology. And so I will try to bring always the sociology aspect of the experience of neurodivergence, and how I will talk about the socially constructed nature of neurodivergence and of autism, of ADHD. And when I'm saying that, I'm not saying that autism is exclusively a social construct and that it doesn't have like real life implications and real effects. We will go into more details about that, but I will talk about the way that culture, social context, also race, also gender, also all other identities have intersect with the experience of AuDHD. So this will be, and also the way that it intersects with our definition of those identities that are neurodivergent. So we'll go into more details about that, but this will be my role in this duo that we are.
Yes. Yeah, I've been working with neurodiversity for over 20 years in various contexts, in home through conflict resolution, crisis prevention, as a special education teacher, as a coach, a variety of neurodivergences. But I definitely have the most experience with ADHD and autism. Even though I'm not autistic myself, I do have a largely autistic community. I have autistic roommates that I've lived with for over 10 years. I actually have been living with autistic roommates since I've gotten out of my parents' house, basically. My sister's autistic. I have many autistic friends, colleagues, collaborators, and clients. And one of the things that I'm really passionate about is inspiring allistic, non-autistic people to learn to sort of speak autistic, as I say, or to accommodate autistics in ways that we were just not taught to do, and sort of normalize the autistic way of being. Which I'm also passionate about that for ADHD, which is just much more personal. And I'm on the other side of that, where I'm asking for the accommodation versus being able to provide it and encourage others to provide it. So that's one of the reasons why the Meerkat Squad is so fun for me. I get to be the sort of tokenistic person and just be like, oh, actually, this is what allistics, this is why we do this, or this is what we mean when we say this. Which can be fun. And also I just keep learning more about autistic people. So Joris and I, of course, each have blind spots. We understand that we do not encompass the entire AuDHD experience. And even though we might have experience working with different life experiences, different ways of being AuDHD, we're going to have to bring on people to the podcast. We're going to have to be checking our blind spots regularly. And so you as the viewers will be helping us do that and helping us always expand our knowledge. This is a collaborative process. The podcast is for us to talk about some things that we know and some things that we're figuring out and some things that we just don't know, and for us to just keep learning more. So please come with us on our journey.
Exactly. Yes. I will also highlight that neither of us are psych professionals. So we will focus lived experience in this podcast and in what we're going to talk about. And we can only speak from our perspective, the perspective of our knowledge and the perspective of our experiences. So that being said, we are fully aware that we will, just among the two of us, we are not covering the entirety of the autistic spectrum, for instance. So at all times, we will try to also shed a light on the differences that people, for instance, with autistic people with high support needs, how that might be different for them. But of course, I cannot speak for that experience because it isn't mine. I acknowledge my privilege in the sense that my experience of autism most of the time is not, I do not experience it as a disability. But I know that some people experience it as a disability all the time. And that is valid too. And we will try our best to bring on people who have higher support needs than I do. And if we are not able to bring them on or to have their voice speaking directly on the podcast, at least we will try to always refer to that experience and how it might differ from mine or for that of other people who have less support needs, let's say.
Yeah. One of the main things that we're going to cover in this podcast and talk about is this intersection between ADHD and autism. So we will talk about ADHD, we will talk about autism, but we will be mostly focusing on how those two things interact with each other, which is actually pretty fascinating because in some ways they're very collaborative, right? I know Joris has a much better memory than I do, can be much more organized than I am, better with pre-planning because I don't have the autism. And it can be a struggle. For example, I have an easier time being more flexible and spontaneous than Joris does because I don't have the autism. So depending on how your ADHD and autism individually interact, they could be supporting each other like a couple, that that takes care of each other's needs, or it could be just compounding the stress and the struggle. And so
Absolutely. Yeah.
different people have different experiences of that, and everyone is different. And again, like Joris said, we're going to try to highlight that the interesting thing about neurodiversity, the interesting thing about ADHD and autism is that they are disabilities, and they are, in another sense, just a different way of being, and different people experience them in different ways. Some people will even call it just their superpower. I might think that has a level of privilege to experience it in that way, but certainly there are benefits to having ADHD and autism, and just there are benefits to being you, whoever you are as one individual. And so Joris has, his particular experience.
Absolutely, yes. As someone who has both autism and ADHD, it is very difficult for me to completely disentangle and to know which one is, oh, this is what I'm experiencing now is more the ADHD side, and what I'm experiencing now is more the autism side. And I would even argue that it's impossible to separate them because we don't cease to have a specific identity in any given situation. It's just that I might be more affected by my ADHD in certain situations when it comes to executive function, for instance, and executive dysfunction. I know that this might be more the ADHD side because I am on ADHD medication and I can see the difference. I can see the improvement. So I know that there's more than just autism in my experience because, just simply being on ADHD meds does affect positively my day-to-day life. However, there are certain areas that are definitely more the autism struggles, for instance, to communicate, to socialize. For instance, I find it very difficult to hang out without a purpose. So even though I love my friends, I have plenty of people in my circle that I would love to spend more time with than I do. But just the idea of, hey, what are you doing tomorrow? Let's hang out. For me, if there's not a reason, if we don't have a specific topic to discuss, if there's or it's not over food, for instance, then I find it's just not in me. And this would be an example of area where I know that it's also the TISM. And as I alluded to earlier, there are very few situations where I do feel that my autism is a disability. But in my case, I would say that it's when I go to the airport, for instance, or in certain occasions dealing with administration, with institutions, being on the phone, having to communicate important informations or receive important informations on the phone. I know that my autism makes it more difficult to navigate those situations, and I can experience things that have been described as meltdown or shutdowns, which are terms that we will cover in future episodes. But those are the situations in which my autism might flare up. But the rest of the time, I would say that I am more affected overall in a negative way by my ADHD. However, this will be different for everyone, and it's even different for myself from time to time. From one day to another, it could be a completely different situation, depending on whether I take my meds or not. Then it could be a time where I feel that the autism is really taking over, or times where I feel that the ADHD is really taking over. So the intersection of those two things and the infinite spectrum and variety of the ways that those two experiences intersect is something that we will explore and cover. But the term AuDHD in itself, it says a lot, but at the same time, it says nothing because, again, those experiences, each one separately is already a spectrum. So the way that those two spectrums intersect with each other is even more Well, that's how multiplication works, right? Multiplications work. So that's multiplied exponentially.
Yeah, absolutely. And like one of the things that people forget is that there's also just the human element, right? It is normal to experience executive dysfunction for all people, to experience that to some level. It is normal for for all people to experience social anxiety to some level. It is normal for people to be like, I want to be able to predict what's going to happen. I don't like when I don't know what's going on. Like all of those things, or like I get bored. Like all of these ADHD or autistic experiences are also normal human experiences. We're just experiencing them to a level that's a little bit different. And so sometimes it can be like, is this ADHD? Is this autism? Is this just me being a person? You know? And I think we have to not forget that one part, because also it can lead us to demonizing the ADHD or the autism, which we don't want to do. You know, I have clients, and when I'm working with my clients one-on-one, we're trying to figure out, what does your brain need? What does your nervous system need? And so it's like, okay, I'm experiencing task paralysis, or, you know, I'm struggling with getting things done. I need to clean my room, but I just don't know how to do it. Okay, well, let's figure out, what does your brain need to be able to do that? And medication certainly helps, right? But when we break it down, it can be anything from, it's too understimulating, which might be on the more ADHD side. It's just too boring. And so maybe I need to add something more fun, a podcast, some snacks. Or it could be, my brain only has one right way to do this, and there's something stopping me from doing it in that one way, right? That monotropism, that sort of autistic, people call it rigid thinking, precision thinking, right? Like that there's just this more direct one way to do things. And because there's a block in that one way to do it, I usually do it this way, but I can't do it this way today, so I can't do it at all, right? That would be on the more autism side. Or maybe a certain level of perfectionism could be from, you know, ADHD can experience perfectionism because of needing to prove yourself, or, you know, or I want it to be perfect so that I can get the dopamine hit. If it doesn't look perfect, then I didn't get the dopamine hit. What was the point? With autism, it might be, no, there's just that my brain has decided that there's one right way to do this, and I don't really know how to tell my brain to half-ass it. Half-assing it doesn't exist in autism world a lot of the time. And so there's that. And then there's the trauma perfectionism, which is, if I'm not perfect, I'm not worthy, which a lot of us experience, right? And then there's
I'm going to be judged. I'm going to be rejected as
rejection
well. Yeah.
sensitive dysphoria, the other level, right? Like that would be more on the ADHD or trauma side, right? There's so many things that go into this perfectionism. So when you're saying, oh, I'm struggling with perfectionism, is that the ADHD? Is that the autism? Is that trauma? Is that you just being a human in a productivity driven culture, in a perfectionist driven culture? What is that? I don't know. Right? So, and does it matter? Like, so then we go just to like, but what do you need to get past this? Do you need, for the autism side, maybe you just need a set of rules, a new set of rules, because you can't work with the rules that you have right now. We're going to need to write a new set of rules for you. And once those rules are written, that's going to be an easier pathway toward getting it done. With the ADHD, like I said, maybe we need to, maybe you feel like you need to have some sort of dopamine hit from it. So maybe instead of cleaning the whole room, we're just going to clean this corner, so at least you can see it being done at the end of it, and you can get that dopamine hit. And then we can go to the other corners another time, and we're not going to overwhelm ourselves. If it's the I'm not worthy, maybe we're going to have some affirmations. Maybe we're going to do some therapy. Maybe we're going to have a friend sit with us and tell us that we're doing a great job, right? Like there's different solutions to work with your brain, but it's not about demonizing, oh, my ADHD is stopping me from doing this, my autism is stopping me from doing this is stopping me. It's like, no, what does it need? Like, I can accept that this is how my brain works, even if it's just for now, and like I just need to figure out what it needs to be happy and move forward. So that stuff is interesting to me. That's why I like to really understand the ADHD and the autism, and this is one of the reasons why it's so fascinating to me, is because I can help people, just this understanding can help people to have self-acceptance, and then to help them to move forward in a way that actually works for them, not in the way that society has told them that they should.
Exactly. And I think what we're going to explore throughout this podcast and what we've been doing with the Meerkat Squad for 4 years now is to explore compassionate inquiry, which is a term that I've heard from Dr. Gabor Mate, who will probably mention again throughout this session. And I know that it's a controversial figure in the neurodivergent circles, but like with everything, we take the good if it applies. If it don't apply, let it fly. So if it's useful, it's kind of like labels, And this is also a conversation that we'll have probably around, are labels useful? Do I label myself as autistic? Do I label myself as ADHD or ADHD, or do none of that matters? And this is a conversation that we will have. But I'm of the opinion that if something is useful to describe or to understand an experience, then it's good. But that doesn't mean we need to take everything about it. And that is the case for Gabor Mate. But to go back to where I was going with this, he talks about compassionate inquiry. And I think that if we are ADHD, or if you suspect that you are ADHD, then it's quite likely that you spent a big part of your life trying to force something or to make it work or not understanding why things didn't work the way that they were supposed to work. And I think that radical self-acceptance and compassionate inquiry is something very important. So instead of, beating yourself up because you can't do this, you're not as efficient as, you're not consistent, why can't you do this, etc. But it's more like, it looks like I'm facing some difficulties in this task that seems easy for everyone else. Why might that be? And what can I do? What could be a workaround to what accommodation might I need that would make it easier for me? And that requires curiosity and compassion, a lot of compassion for ourselves and for others. So this is something that we will really highlight. And I think that the beauty of Sheila and myself, coming from completely different perspectives and different experiences as well, is that Sheila is at a vantage point to be able to say, for instance, whether something is specific to autism because you don't experience it, Sheila, or because you haven't seen it with other people that you've worked with, or whether it is typically autistic. So the fact that you are only ADHD and not autistic, I think that this is a vantage point, an advantage in this situation. And myself, I have both, but I am also at the intersection of other experiences of marginalization. I am a black man. I'm a black person, in case you haven't noticed. I am queer, and I have experience of black majority societies as well as white majority societies. I grew up in the Caribbean, in Guadeloupe. I am an immigrant where I live now. I live in London, although now I have citizenship, so I am fully English, but I have experiences of immigration, etc. And I think that that puts me at a vantage point to also be able to identify when certain experiences are potentially more due to, for instance, racism than neurodivergent misunderstanding or autistic misunderstanding. And we will see that very often those parallels, we can draw parallels between the experience of autism and the experience of living in a black body or living in a gender minoritized bodies. For instance, that is not my case. I am a cisgender man, but I will also try my best to talk about the experience of other genders, and we will try to have also potentially guests who can speak a little bit more in more details about that. But definitely, AuDHD and gender, those two things intersect in ways that we will explore. AuDHD and race, AuDHD and culture as well, because the perception and the experience of autism is completely different from one culture to another. And what we describe in the West as autistic traits, in other cultures, they might be the norm. So, what does autism look like in a different culture? This is a question that I always ask myself and that I hopefully will explore with you during this podcast. And yeah, those are the importance of coming at it from different perspective and different angles. And this is what we hope to bring during this podcast.
Yeah, I'm in the United States, but I lived in Brazil, and I always say that I didn't have ADHD in Brazil because the entire country has ADHD, and it's not entire. It's a very much an exaggeration, but it was true to some extent. Time and
Yeah.
manner. Anyway, there are certain things. Yes, so that and all of this is very exciting. All of the things that we're going to get to talk about, and we already have our first like 10 episodes planned out.
Mm.
So I hope that you will all stick with us. This is also going to be a community, right? So the podcast is part of a bigger project, the Meerkat Squad project. Please follow us on Instagram. That we have right now. That's the way to contact us and follow along with what we're doing at the Meerkat Squad. And we're going to try to create something like a community, right? Now, community is a word that people throw around. I take that word very seriously. I know Joris understands that word on a much deeper level as well. And community is really where you are reliant, right? Interconnected. And the Meerkat Squad, what it can be, is probably not a community in the sense of truly what we need, but it can be a place for people to meet and to build community and to practice community skills, to practice conflict resolution, which is one of my favorite things, and to
Mm.
practice interacting, to practice authenticity, to practice unmasking, to practice, taking care of each other, showing up for each other. What does that look like when we're dealing with neurodivergence and the comorbidities that come with that, often chronic health and pain and different things.
Coming
And
up with
so,
social scripts if and when necessary for those who need it,
yes,
and
and
yeah.
and so we will be having speakers. We'll be having classes through this project. We will be having, like Joris said, like we talked about, having people on the podcast coming in from different perspectives. And we're also going to invite some of the people from the community to come onto the podcast to do Q&As. There's a lot of really exciting things coming up, so you're going to want to follow along and join in on the fun, be part of the new Meerkat Squad 2.0, because in the past it was just a coaching group, but now it's going to be hopefully something more long lasting, more sustainable, more community building, more collaborative, right? As
Yeah.
opposed to us just teaching you. This can be more of a collaborative space.
Right. And this is as good a time as ever to highlight that when we talk about community, we already have an existing Meerkat Squad community. So shout outs to all of the people, lovely people who participated in one of our 10 Meerkat sessions, even especially those who participated to several of those 10 Meerkat sessions. So this is a new version of the Meerkat Squad, but as we said, we will have an aspect that is also much more community oriented. The podcast is more to get our names and words out there and hopefully to bring in more people, and then we hopefully will reach an amount of people and of community that is enough for us to do something different, to do something new. But those of us who have followed us or who have been part of this project since the beginning or for the past 4 years, then we are really excited to see you in this new version as well. We haven't forgotten about you. The whole point is that we want to keep you, we want you to come back, and we want to keep you in, and we want to build on top of what we've already built with you.
Yes, our little meerkats. We're trying to create a home for you
Yeah.
to be in long term and to meet each other.
Yeah.
The 10 groups all coming together and getting to be in community with the new groups, the new people who are coming in.
Exactly. And a home, yeah, a home that I'm going to be completely honest. One of the things that I've always struggled with is the role of the educator or the coach. And I've always tried to break out of the Western mold of the banking model of education, which is that one person has the knowledge, one person is the teacher, and the other person is the student, and they shut up and they listen and they receive the knowledge. I was never really comfortable with it, and that's absolutely not what we did during the Meerkat Squad. But having it the fact that it was in the format of coaching group, there was still an aspect of Sheila, myself, and Lena, us three, the coaches at the time, that we were the ones with the knowledge, and that's something that I've always insisted on trying to not, perpetuate and reproduce. And I think that in this new format, we will have more space to really create a space that is more horizontal, where everyone brings in their lived experience, their knowledge, their experience of themselves as well, and hopefully we can focus on problem solving. Every week, maybe potentially, we'll have sessions where we'll have a problem. One person will bring a problem, and together as a group, we will try to share our experiences, our perspectives, and try to see if we can come up with a collective solution to an individual's problem. An individual's problem, but is probably going to be a problem that we've all experienced to some extent at some point. So this is the aspect that I'm really, really excited and looking forward to exploring with this new format.
Yes. Oh, and for those of you who are curious, where's Lena? Where is Lena, our third Meerkat Squad coach? Lena will be a part of this. She will not be as involved as Joris and I because she's now working as an art therapist and living her dream, and we want to support her. But she will absolutely be around. We already have plans to do some art for AuDHD workshops and having her come on to the podcast and things like that. So she will be around. She will just won't, unfortunately, we won't see her as consistently for this iteration of the Meerkat Squad because she's going and changing lives and being amazing out in the world. So that's where she is.
Yes, absolutely. For now, and maybe in the future, she will have more time or more availability to be back fully part of the three meerkats, and then that would be great as well.
Yes. All right. Well, hopefully you will all follow us. Let us know what topics you want us to cover.
Yeah.
Like I said, we've got some planned out because we know from the 10 rounds of the Meerkat Squad exactly what people want to hear about. We know that you want to learn about burnout. We know that you want to learn about PDA. We know that you want to talk about relationships and sexuality and conflict and communication. Like we know some of those things.
Rejection-sensitive dysphoria and... Yes, we
Yes.
will talk about that, but feel free to still add if there's really something, a burning topic that you really, really want us to know that, we want to cover, then let us know in the comments. Whatever platform you're watching this on, we'll keep an eye on the comments, and we want to create or recreate or continue to create a community. So use this as also your opportunity to engage with us.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for watching, listening, however you're taking this in. We appreciate you. We are excited to have you as part of our community, excited to have you as our new Meerkats and our old Meerkats returning. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, and see you next time.
See you next time.